Yes, indeed I am.
Yeah.
Both a fan and a lecturer of English. Though I've never made the connection between watching basketball and learning English. I think it's an interesting idea.
Welcome to More Than Basketball podcast, where we will explore how basketball is much more than what you saw on the court. Today I'm with Levi Lam, Lecturer 1 of Center of Language Education of HKUST. He was a master in teaching English to speakers of other languages at San Jose State. So, welcome, Professor Lam. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Okay, first of all, we'll have to break the habit of calling me a professor. That's a title that I haven't earned, nor do I deserve. But thank you for having me, Fido. I'm very anxious. I shouldn't say anxious. I'm very eager to talk to you about basketball and why it's more than just what we see on the court.
Yeah, because I believe that basketball it can be used as a medium to learn English. That's why I'm here with Levi. He is a basketball fan and much more than just a basketball fan because he is a lecturer of English learning in HKUST.
Yes, indeed I am.
Yeah.
Both a fan and a lecturer of English. Though I've never made the connection between watching basketball and learning English. I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and I will try to make you do that today.
Okay.
Yeah, so why I got this idea is that it's an inspiration for myself because I'm a basketball fan also, and I believe that basketball, by watching basketball or watching some YouTube about analysis about basketball, I grew better at English as time goes by. That's why I believe that it might be used to help out others as well. So I would like to get Levi's input in it. So let me share you some examples. First, let's start with myself. So when I was in middle school, I love basketball, so I watched a lot of live stream or even some YouTube videos about people analyzing the game, some channel like King of the Fourth Quarter or Sporting Logically, etc., etc. And by listening to them or watching them speak, I learned about some phrases or some saying or some vocabs about English, and which I use them in my daily life now also. So another example is from Easy Online English. They uploaded a video about learning English, American English with the NBA. They put on some clips about highlights of Jeremy Lin, and then some analysis on Jeremy's game, and then the video is in English audio, but she put on some subtitles in it. And after going through the clips several times, she went on to analyze the phrases that was used in the game or in the analysis, like the Knicks are down by 8, and she would explain what that means, how it relates to basketball. So my question for you, Levi, is that do you think me and Easy Online English, they are one-off cases, or you think that this method can be used to apply in our general daily life and use English as a medium to help out some English learners?
Okay, well, first of all, you mentioned that you learned some phrases and vocabulary that you use commonly.
Yep.
Can you give me an example?
Like, for example, some YouTube video, they let's get right into it, or without further ado. So these are the vocabs that I didn't know before. But after watching those videos, I've learned about these phrases and I use them in my daily life.
Okay, and in what context have you used the expression without further ado?
Videos, because I also do some videos on YouTube, so I will use that, or some general on Cloud9, or let's say hustle, grind, those type of words. I now use them in my daily life, and I learn them from watching basketball or basketball video.
Okay, so you also understand the context of its usage. So when you introduce your own videos, you use without further ado to sort of get your audience excited about the content you're about to show them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think you make a very good point. Expressions like hustle and grind, that's great to use. It shows a facility with language, especially when you can use colloquialisms. However, we have to be very aware that is appropriate in a very specific context.
Yes.
Right? It would be unusual for you to say, use hustle or grind in a professional job interview.
True.
Right? So also understanding the context in which it's appropriate to use is part of the learning process.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that in watching basketball related content that can be very helpful to English learners is seeing the variety of different people from different origins who have learned English. Right? Basketball is a global sport now.
Yes.
We have European players, we have African players, we have Asian players, we have South American players, many of whom English is not their first language.
Yeah.
But you can see very quickly how they've improved their English. Right? Like somebody like Luka Doncic.
Yeah, sure.
Right? He's 19 years old, comes into the league, and then 5-6 years later, he's much more comfortable doing interviews in English.
Yes.
Right? So I think not only would you pick up a phrase or two, understand the context of how to use that phrase appropriately, but I think you would also see the embodiment of people successfully learning a language that can be very challenging.
It's about more than the phrases or vocab. It's an environment, because it's kind of like training. Because like if you only like me in Hong Kong, only in textbook, just reading or writing, you don't listen or you don't speak. But through these videos, I get used to listening to English. So one common struggle for us Hong Kong students is that they found a native speaker when they speak English, they go too fast and they can't catch up. But through practicing by watching the videos or highlights, I get used to the speed, so I can kind of catch up just well. So yeah, that's how I look at these cases. So next thing is that I want to ask you, Levi, is that what are the pros and cons of learning English through basketball?
Well, I think one of the cons is that sometimes we use these expressions and thinking that it's appropriate in every single context.
Yes.
And of course, basketball is notorious for its trash talk.
Yes, for sure.
And although that can, in a social context, might be something that could actually bond people together,
Yep.
Obviously you need to understand when to use it, how to use it, and where to use it, right? So that's one of the issues. The other issue is that, by and large, the English that you would hear from an NBA broadcast is American English.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be a bit alienating. I mean, obviously, being a global sport, we have more and more commentators from different parts of the world who do use English. But again, it might be a little bit narrow, and some of the expressions might not translate into other English-speaking parts of the world. So those are a couple of the potential negatives. The positives are really innumerable. Right. I mean, it not only are you exposed to language in a very authentic, natural context in that arena in basketball,
Yeah, sure.
but you are exposed to it at a natural speed. And what you mentioned earlier, that a lot of times when you speak to a native English speaker, it seems like they go too fast.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
But the more you expose yourself to that, the more you begin to identify the rhythms of that language spoken in its natural speed. So both things, right? Some of the context appropriateness and the exposure to authentic language.
Yep. To add to the cultural difference between American English and British English, for example. So I'm used to listening to American English, as you can see, but sometimes when I watch some YouTube videos from British or some British talk show, sometimes their lingo I can't quite understand, and I think that adds to your point about is one of the issue or cons of learning English through basketball. But I think it's getting better because basketball is getting more and more global. Like for example, even just English. So I support the Thunder, Oklahoma City Thunder, and we recently got a guard, Josh Giddey. He's from Australia, and it's kind of a cultural shock to not just me but other American fans, because for example, the basketball, the basket, America maybe call them hoops, but Josh, he calls them rings, and so it caused some cultural shocks, and I think it's a good opportunities for us basketball lovers to learn more about different cultures. And I also agree that the cons of the pros is that it can help you get used to it. And I think another pros that I would like to add is that it's just more fun. For example, like me, I know by going through secondary school, we just watch some interview or videos about some news or typhoon or some terrorist attack. But when you watch the English through something you love, like basketball. So I just naturally go there and watch it, and I can sit there and watch it for an hour without any complaint. But I will for sure complain if you ask me to watch an interview for 1 hour. So I think it's another pros about like learning English through basketball. Do you think that's just me, or just other? It can be applied to other students as well.
No, I think that idea of making sure that you balance your scholastic pursuits with something that you can relax to, and also at the same time have some sort of academic benefit, I think that's really, really important. Obviously, we're very familiar with the university environment locally, and it can be very demanding. I mean, I try to think back to when I was in university, and if I were to apply to university now, I would not get in. I would not get
Really?
in. Oh, no way. That's the way it's supposed to be. Every successive generation is more and more accomplished. That's progress,
true.
right? That's what we call progress. But at the same time, you need an outlet. And if for you, the outlet is basketball, and simultaneously you can get some benefit from it in addition to relaxation, and for you it seems to be you picking up English a little bit more fluently, then I think that is an ideal situation. And it doesn't necessarily have to be watching basketball, right? I mean, other students can certainly find other outlets in which they can balance, again, their scholastic development with their personal development. Why do you support the Thunder?
Not it's a long story. So basically, just I came around 2011, and they were in the finals, so I just support them as it goes.
But they lost.
It's not about win or loss. I don't know. I just find them fun to use on 2K, so that's why I support the Thunder.
Oh,
from
okay.
them.
Okay, it's a video game.
Yeah, and also to add to learning, I think I not just learn English. I also learn some moral values by watching basketball, like seeing how the players hustle and grind, like I said, to get to their goal, or just keep coming back to fight and never give up, or staying loyal to the team. Shout out Kevin Durant.
Wow, I never associated Kevin Durant, James Harden, Serge Ibaka, or Russell Westbrook with moral values, but I guess you're right. I mean, that's. I mean, by the time you get to the NBA, there's maybe 450 positions, right?
Yeah, like
32 teams, roughly 12 to 15 players per team, right? Maybe 450 spots in the world. So nobody gets there by luck, right?
Yeah,
you can have as much talent as you want, but without that perseverance, without that dedication, you're not going to make it. So yeah, I guess in a large respect, yes, you can learn something about moral values.
Yeah, and I think it's not just from basketball, like you said. Other students can use what they like to learn English or other stuff. Like my mom, she asked me like about my sister's English, and she want my sister to improve. So I suggest her to like put on some Netflix show for my sister, for like in English audio, so she can get used to it. But she just she gave up. But I think it's a good measure to help students to like get used to English and learn about English. So maybe last question for you, Levi, is that if you are to organize a course about learning English, would you make learning basketball through English a theme for your course?
Learning basketball through English?
Like vice versa, learning English through basketball.
A theme? It'd be an interesting unit.
Yeah.
Right? But again, there's not everybody's a basketball fan. We won't hold it against anybody who isn't a basketball fan. And again, the English that you would hear commonly in basketball is very jargon laden, right? You need to understand the rules, you need to understand a lot of the different types of fouls that they are, and that would take a lot of explaining. Now, if you were to use basketball players, let's say in an interview context, let's say in a presentation context, because they do a lot of presentations, then yes, there are a lot of things that can be very, very useful, right? But using the broadcast itself could be a little bit challenging, especially if not everybody's a basketball fan, and you'd have to explain a lot of the details of it.
It took me a lot of time to get used to like the basketball language or some plays or some rules as well. So maybe that's not for everyone. So to recap, I have asked Levi, a lecturer in Center of language education at HKUST about if it's possible for us to learn English through the medium of basketball. And he said that there are pros and cons about learning English through basketball, and it's not a one-off. Other students can use the same measure to get better at English as well. And he said that the pros of it is that it can help students to get used to listening to English, and the cons is that it might lack cultural diversity, or some students might not be interested in it. And he is willing to to make learning English through basketball a unit of his course. So that's a win in my eyes.
Okay, so, you've given me a commitment. So I need to ask you for your commitment. What are you committed to do after this episode? How to further your English and at the same time your love of basketball?
Continue to watch more basketball, and actually my goal is to work in an NBA front office one day. So I will for sure continue to work on my English and basketball as well.
An NBA front office, for real?
Yes. That's my goal.
Oh, I'll take you on the Sixers right now. Nah. You can have Daryl Morey's job right now.
Let's not go into a James Harden conversation. Else it will go on for an hour.
Yeah, you're probably right. We want to enjoy the rest of our day.
Yep. So anything you want to add, Levi? Like, where can us audience see your work?
Oh, pretty much in the classroom, I suppose. But it seems as though you read my faculty profile.
Yep.
So you can find my background on my faculty profile also.
So the moral of the day is come to HKUST.
Yes, and more specifically, start watching basketball.
Yep. Not really.
Okay.
Save me.
Okay. All right.
So
thanks, Fido. I really enjoyed our conversation.
This is Fido. If you want to go on a journey with us and explore how basketball can be more than basketball, not English or some other aspect like statistic where we might look into for our next episode, please subscribe to the More Than Basketball podcast and stay tuned.
All right. Thanks, Fido.
Thanks.